evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to episode 6 of Miss Marvel reaction, discussion, review, spoiler-filled. We're going to get into spoilers. If you've watched all of the other ones, you're here for this one. So this is not a surprise. But I want to start with, I guess, I want to start with the end, but I don't want to. I want to get to that point. So
So start at the beginning.
I like this episode a lot. Is why I'm kind of like, in this series overall. We'll get into the series overall in a minute, but like I like this episode a lot for the way they've been telling the story as one continuous kind of arc instead of episodic kind of feel to it, which is what Moon Knight did, which feels a little bit different than what like WandaVision did, and Loki was kind of episodic a little bit at times. There was some like
WandaVision was episodic just because that was by default, right? Each episode was another decade of
television,
TV,
and stuff like that. Yeah, and there was only a couple of cliffhangers within like Loki. There was one big cliffhanger before we got into the next week, but it just I liked that this felt one big 3.5-4 hour movie.
Yeah,
because it picked up from Bruno and Kamran getting out,
right,
and
on the run
after the Circle Q got blown up, and so I just like that. Just starting from there, moving on. Kenobi did it. Kenobi made it kind of feel like that kind of continuous. It was supposed to be one big story.
Yeah.
Kind of feel to it. And I like that we started there because you get the bonding between Kamran and Bruno.
Right.
But still on the run, not really sure what to do.
Yeah.
And then you get the Marvel logo, and like it was a cold open with the two of them on the run. We get the Marvel logo, and then it's Kamala coming home from Pakistan and coming out to her family, except they all already knew.
Because their mom told them.
Because I just and why I hesitated, because I want to talk about Dad, because there's two great scenes in this episode with Dad, and when Kamala tries to come out, and her brother makes the joke, and her dad makes a joke like, "Oh, a light girl, light woman, like whatever."
You're what? That's crazy.
But I like that Dad was like, "We are proud of who you are, but are you going to be safe?"
Yeah. Still being a dad,
Yep.
Still worried about his little girl, but they're all like totally accepting. This is amazing. This is awesome. Woohoo!
And I love that because some of the other MCU television stories we've gotten has been about bad parenting has turned someone into something else. Specifically, I'm thinking about Moon Knight, because that's the freshest one in our head.
Oh, yeah.
About his mom just pretty much being abusive and blaming him for his brother's death, and kind of Wanda's story of trying to be a good mother but going about it the bad way, and so it was just nice to have a family dynamic just embracing somebody for who they are.
Yeah.
Even though Mom early on in this show was very overly protective of her teenage daughter.
Right. But we kind of got a bit of a resolution to that in the last episode where, she was with her mom and she told her, I'm just worried about you, and
right.
Right. And she apparently she was a bit of a rebellious teenager. Mom was, and so she kind of remembers what kind of trouble she got into, and is trying to keep her daughter out of that.
Which is the fault of every parent. Is I'm telling you not to do this because I've done it, and you shouldn't do it. Except to make you the person you are, you have to go out and do things and make mistakes,
right,
and stuff. And we were pretty much that way with our kids. Like if you're going to do something stupid, do it safely, or don't get caught, or if
and they did some stupid things.
and they did some stupid things, and
they
they did
got
some things
trouble.
that were at the time not legal, but are now. Is that a good way of putting it? We're in Arizona,
at least in some states.
And at least in some states. But we were always like, hey, if you're going to drink underage, do it where you're not going to drive home, or do it where you have somebody taking care of you, or like we like you need to go out and live your life and become your own person. So that's why it hit me so well. Is that like, we're proud of you? Are you being safe? Cool. What can we do to help you make be a better superhero? And I just love that. I loved, and that was really kind of shown early on when they had the matching Hulk outfits to go to Avengers.
Yeah. Oh, it was so cute. And the brother, I think I had this preconceived notion about him in the beginning episode. He's so much older than she is, and so he's almost, and this is probably my own experience. My siblings are very much older than I am, and so I just had a lot of moms and dads.
Right.
They all treated me like their own child, right? And so I guess I kind of expected him to be the same way. And the dad had kind of laid out the comment in the first episode about, do you have to be so religious all the time, or something like that? And I was like, oh, he's gonna be the strict one out of the trio of parents, and he really wasn't. He was just as excited, and ultimately ended up helping her help Kamran. So it was refreshing.
It was very refreshing. It was very refreshing. They get the phone call. Kamran's on the run. Bruno's in trouble. Kamala goes to go help, and Mom's like, no, you're not leaving. And Kamala has that moment of like, Mom, come on, I can. And she's like, no, you're not going out dressed like that, which is just a perfect like subversion of what we were just talking about.
Right.
The setup of there being cool parents, and then her mom's like, you're not going out dressed like that. And it's like, wait, what? And she gives her the full costume. We talked about last week that she'd been kind of picking up the pieces of the costume the whole way. And Mom,
but it was hinted at. We kind of felt like Mom was gonna make her an outfit, and hopefully not a matching one for Dad, which they didn't. So she got the.
But I would be surprised if they do a season 2 that Dad shows up in the S lightning bolts,
like a T-shirt or something. They'll all be super Ms. Marvel groupies. That all three of them will be Mom and Dad and the brother will all be wearing Ms. Marvel shirts. And
Kamran and Bruno go into the mosque for safe haven, and them kind of like
the worst place you can go.
The worst, like they've already been. The damage control's already been here. DC's already been here at least twice, and I'm pretty sure like the sanitation department has got us on watch. Which is again, we'll talk about this again later, but just explaining kind of the world as it is right now. Your Muslim mosque in a mosque in New York is being watched 24/7, even if they're doing nothing wrong.
Yep.
The Battle of the High School. I can't remember the high school off the top of my head. I should have looked it up before we began, but I looked up other things instead. I like that Bruno and Kamran gets in, and then Kamala and Nina get in, and then Zoe's there.
Zoe's there because the theater has the best lighting for her TikToks.
It's such a yada yada makes complete sense. Kind of thing.
And then her brother shows up, and it's like, is the whole world here? This is supposed to be the quietest place in the city, a high school on a Saturday night, and everyone's there.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's two kids making out under the bleachers in the basketball court.
That's true.
But the montage of the plan, I just love that as a callback to the beginning where you're showing Kamala's YouTube channel and like kind of laying out all like she's laying out the story and whatever, and then doing the montage of collecting all the things. But then they just straight out Thomas Crown, where's the ball? 3-card Monty, battle that happens in the high school, it's such a refreshing kind of thing to have teenagers use their brains in a non-lethal way against adults who are just being dicks.
Yeah.
It could have been really easy to make that overly violent or overly aggressive or whatever.
Yeah.
But they made it was all about, sleight of hand and look over here,
Yep.
barricades, and
Yep.
and the DC guys were all using those shockwave
Yeah.
shotguns instead, which is based off of the Incredible Hulk, that Thaddeus Ross used, and
Right.
so
Yeah.
but it was I really appreciated that tactic of not making it an ultra violent fight with teenagers versus adults.
Right. Well, and
in a high school.
and Kamala is a non-violent superhero, right? She's and we get to the part where she's like um, defending Kamran against damage control um, and protecting damage control. I mean, she embiggens and
She's at the thing.
and smashes the back end of like a Humvee or whatever, and she like jumps over the hood. She's like, "Are you guys okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, thanks." Thanks, Light Girl or whatever,
Right,
Starlight or
right.
no, that's somebody different.
That's a very different show. The ultimate conflict between Kamran and Kamala, when it looks like they're going to get Kamran out, and then he starts asking about his mom.
Yeah.
And Kamala had a conversation with Bruno early on before everything kind of got started, and Bruno told her not to tell him.
Yeah.
Because he's not entirely stable right now, partly because he just got infused with this power, and all he's worried about is being with his mom and trying to fix whatever's wrong with him. But if you think about the timeline, all of that happened within like the last 12 hours or
however
24
long
hours,
it took
right?
them to get back from
right.
Pakistan.
And so it all kind of happened fairly quickly. And so he's still, Kamran is still processing what's going on. And so Bruno, being the good guy that he is like, don't tell him until we get through all this. And then,
right.
And then
he's just unstable. I mean, Bruno saw that in the alley, right? He, was Bruno there? Maybe he wasn't. Maybe no.
On the train, he was unstable because he
punched. No, in the alley.
Oh, in the alley when he explodes.
He explodes, right? And so it was Bruno and Kamala, and he kind of and just explodes. So he's just like physically, his powers, whatever, are just unstable because he hasn't learned how to deal with them, and there's a bunch of stress going
montage on the road.
Right. There's a bunch of stress going on, so that's making it, probably worse. And so, yeah, I think he's just like, don't even light that fuse because it's just going to be bad.
Right. And then when he finally kind of figures out that his mom died, he does kind of go on a rampage, and he busts out the front door, and Damage Control is standing there, and he just starts like attacking people, but it doesn't come across.
Well, they start shooting him.
They shoot at him first, and he kind of makes a small shield, and then they stop, and then they go to start to fire again, and Kamala comes in and saves them.
Yeah,
showing that like she's trying to save him, even though he's the one kind of. I won't say he's the one instigating because Damage Control's there, and they're instigating everything.
Right,
but
they kind of started it, but then he's being again. It goes back to Kamala's more of a defensive superhero than an offensive, right? So she's all about trying to just protect as many people or everyone as possible, which is why the whole her dropping the kid that keeps coming up over and over and over again, because that's like her, she's probably projecting this, but she's like mortified that
Yeah,
happened,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
She, that no one should get hurt on her watch. And so, she's out there just trying to stop everyone.
yeah,
Just you stop firing at them and you stop firing at them. Everybody stop.
yeah. And a lot of people kind of talk about who's the big bad in this series, and the big bad is the establishment that is damage control.
Well,
And
it's the woman, and I don't remember
I don't remember her name off
what
the top of my head.
her name was, but it ultimately ended up being her
Right.
because the guy with damage control was just like, you are completely flown, off.
You're gonna attack a bunch of kids at a high school.
Right.
How's that gonna look?
And in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Everybody's recording this.
And the fact that they started the episode with a, like, not a warning, but like a caution of there may be some sensitive stuff, and that's it comes from that. There's adults attacking children at a school.
Yeah.
And open gunmen in a school, and she doesn't care about any of that. Her line of they've caused so much damage around the city, we have to stop these enhanced individuals. You're the reason they've been doing all the damage is because you keep going after them,
Right.
And if it feels very Heroes. And Heroes is based kind of off the X-Men kind of whatever,
Yeah.
but the X-Men kind of base storyline. But the idea of anyone with powers shouldn't be allowed out because they're going to cause more damage than not. And this makes me really happy that they kind of went with this damage control version of the story because it is post Endgame, post Infinity War,
Right.
past Battle of New York. So they've already kind of laid the groundwork, not blatantly, but kind of like at least like little nuggets all over the place of if people with powers are just going to cause damage, then what's the point of having them? And
Right.
who's going to pay for it? So
well, and that's the whole Sokovia Accords.
right.
Look, they did all this damage. We need to control them, and that didn't end well.
Right.
And so this is kind of the post.
We'll do it clandestinely.
Sure.
Clandestinized.
Right. Words.
Right. But you understand what I'm trying to say. Like,
yeah. Yeah. More. Well, it's even in the name, right? Damage control.
Right.
We're not here to. We're not shield. We're not here to, stop you. Well, and now it's sword, right?
Right.
Which is probably even worse.
That's even.
But or Hydra or whatever. We're damage control. We're not the Sokovia Accords. We're not trying to imprison, superheroes or people with powers or, put you on the raft or whatever. We're just trying to minimize the damage. Except that in at least this agent's case, she's actually antagonizing the damage to occur. It's like,
and she wants to capture all of those who have these powers. Who are doing and it feels very like Zemo. Zemo kind of has that same kind of nobody should have powers because it's just going to cause problems. But you also have that, there's a whole arc in the X-Men about mutants being second-class citizens because they do all this stuff and they can get away with all this stuff because they have powers. And there's this whole group with Stryker about trying to control, and so yes, it's this kind of leads us to a certain point. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to finish kind of talking about the episode and then what could be going on in the future, because he said the word. But ultimately, what it comes down to is Kamran just explodes and Crystal's octopus arms everywhere, and now he's the upside down. It just Crystal's going everywhere and
endangering everyone.
And it's not that he's trying to be this villain or anything. He's just uncontrolled, he's unleashed emotionally, and so he's just let everything go.
Right.
And Kamala comes down and puts this big dome over him, and he's like, "I'm never going to be able to go back to who I was. How can I? They'll never accept me. Look at what I've done." And I love her line of, this is the new normal. We'll never be normal again.
Right.
But what we do with this is up to us. And it's very Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I have powers now. I need to do something about it. And I'm going to be judged for who I am. One way or the other, I'm going to be judged. And if I'm judged for having powers, I'm going to use those powers for good.
Right.
And Kamala finally being able to get to Kamran and having him have a moment of pause, then he realizes, okay, I can't leave now. I'm stuck. And she opens the ground, tells him to get to the dock.
Yep.
And then I love that because she's used so much energy, she's kind of drained a little bit, and the dome goes down. He goes into the hole, and then everybody comes to Kamala's aid because she's now the one who needs to be encased or saved or whatever.
Right, because the damage control chick is unhinged
or whatever. And I like that the police were the first line of defense, and not that they actually stopped anybody, but they were they made a line in front of all the civilians who were all around Kamala.
Yep.
And it because of how we are in America right now, police are looked upon poorly because of decisions by a very small group. The visual representation, at least for me, of the cop cheering Kamala, helping save everybody, and then the cop standing there to defend the person who just defended them is against somebody else who's just being a dick.
Yeah.
Like, I just like that kind of visual representation. It's also the police protecting a Muslim woman.
Yeah.
And so, people are like, don't make it political or whatever. Well, I mean, this is part of the conversation that we've been having the entire time, is this idea of embracing the Muslim view of the world in the United States. And
well, and that's the story, right? So when was this comic actually written? In the 90s?
2007?
Oh, okay. So
2000 and it's like late aughts, teens, somewhere in there, I want to say.
So, I mean,
it's fairly new.
It's the world that we live in, right? And that's the character. And Marvel decided to bring this comic to the live action universe. So she's Muslim, and that's her character. I mean, that's a big part of her character. Yeah, so you can't you've made that decision to tell this story. You can't shy away from what it's like to be Muslim in America right now. So, we're not Muslim, but I felt like they handled it well. We learned things.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot in reviews, but I've watched several TikTokers and people of Pakistani or Muslim descent watching the show and saying, hey, this is doing a really good job. Yeah, they're getting some things wrong, but that's going to happen. Wrong is not necessarily the right word, but they did things differently than what actually the scripture says, or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
But one specific person that I've been watching, she is mid-20s and sits down with her parents and watches every episode. And her parents are like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And she is the example of a first generation. Her parents came over to the States and to get away from everything, got here, has to live in this world where a small group of Muslims have put a bad name on a bunch of other people.
Yep.
And so her interaction of her parents and how much the show, she's been saying how good the show is. So from our point of view, from my point of view at least, I've really liked the representation of what they've been doing with all of that.
Yeah.
So the battle gets over, and we have our first little wrap up, and that's Kamala in her outfit looking at herself in the mirror and being super excited about who she is in her costume and embracing herself. And then Dad comes out, and they sit on the patio roof,
on the porch roof,
porch roof, and he's all freaking out because it's super high, and she's been like bouncing around off of freaking light steps all over the place.
He's like,
the when she's running to help Bruno and Kamran, and she stops at the red light, and they like taps her foot, and and then light turns green. She takes out like, "You're in the sky. It doesn't matter." I love that. But her heart-to-heart conversation with her dad, and like, "Are you still gonna go with Light Girl or whatever?" And she's like, "I am still working it out." And him telling the story of, "We tried for a second child. We tried for a really long time. You were kind of our miracle child of, and it's super marvelous, and we named you Kamala because in not in Islamic, the language of
yeah.
I had to work that one out. um your name means miraculous, whatever.
Wonder,
Wonder.
but a small wonder, like a like he said one word and then he said or a
Or
marvel.
Marvel, yeah. And he hands her back her mask, and he's like, "You've always been our Miss Marvel," and you get to see that ding, and I'm like, "Roll credits."
Well, and she got really excited. She's like, "Oh, I'm named after Carol Danvers."
Right. But I love that. Again, we talked about this at the beginning of the episode. Dad being a good father, like, why we love you is because of this, not
Right.
because of who you are, not because of your superpowers or whatever else. But you are my child, and I'm always going to love you no matter what. And I just love that kind of thing. We get the fight over the car, which Kamran's car. Bruno's like, "I'm going to take it with me to Caltech," which I'm totally I it should happen. It should happen. And the 43-hour drive and whatever. But in that conversation, Bruno kind of takes Kamala to the side and says, "I looked at your your makeup, your blood and stuff again."
Yeah, because her brother had made a comment about why her and not me or the rest of us.
Right. And so, he's like, your genes are different than there's something else that's there. Your genes are different from your parents and your brother. It's some kind of mutation.
Yep.
He said the word. We have said the word mutation, mutant in the MCU now, and we talked about it after the show, after the episode. Inhumans is a version of mutation within the comics, if I understand correctly. Please be nice in the comics. And it has to deal with Kree and their mutation, their manipulation of genetic code and stuff like that. And that's how we get the humans. And then they all become superpowered, and they go to the moon and form a base and all that kind of stuff. But also in the Marvel comic, in the Miss Marvel comic, she gets her powers for the Terrigen Mist that is Kree, and they use that story arc within Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's how a bunch of the Inhumans in that show came into existence.
Right.
And they've been trying to shine away from that in this show. But I like this kind of introduction of, you are special because you're different at a molecular level.
Right.
And so you've introduced the idea, the concept that your genes have mutated into something else.
Right. And I think that, I mean, they might, but I think that with everything that's happened around Inhumans, the show, and the references in other shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, that they this makes more sense. Don't don't go don't make it more confusing with Inhumans and mutants. We have the X-Men in the Marvel universe now, so you've got to bring mutants in, and if you're gonna also do Inhumans, then it all just gets. I mean, that's what people love and hate about comics. Is it's just like we're what now? These people are what now? Um, they're a frog and they're a superhero. What?
And the screaming goats.
And and raccoons. Um, so I mean, it makes sense storytelling wise in the Marvel universe to pick one title, one name for these people who have this different gene or whatever that gives them powers. Because in the Avengers, the people in the Avengers either don't have any powers at all, they're just really good at their job, or have a lot of money and make
Right.
tech
Right.
suits,
Right.
or they're a god from another planet.
The only exception to that rule, yes, as we sit with the Avengers right now, the only difference in that is Wanda, because Wanda
Right.
she was, as they kind of explained it in WandaVision, which we didn't know in Age of Ultron, she was already inherently enhanced as she was, and then she got manipulated or
Right.
mutated by the Mind Stone. So she's the only exception to.
Well, and that was the whole. Was it Hydra or was it Shield?
It was Hydra
that was coming in, and they were kind of like finding people, kids, whatever, that had this gene mutation, maybe.
Right, but they never really specifically laid it out.
Right, but now they can. They can go back and kind of, and they've kind of made her more of a witch than a. But I mean, they could easily, explain all of because her brother, Pietro was
had the same kind of mutation, which made him Quicksilver, which they couldn't call him Quicksilver because legal terms, whatever. But that was kind of a. We talk about this a lot in Star Wars. Tip of the iceberg storytelling. They laid that gene in Age of Ultron. They added to it later on in WandaVision, and they even added on to it in Multiverse of Madness. And now here they've actually said, okay, mutants are a thing. So they've been kind of laying this groundwork, inadvertently maybe at the beginning.
Yeah, some kind of backwards storytelling.
A little backwards storytelling, which I'm
Again,
fine with.
Star Wars.
I'm Star Wars and Doctor Who. They do it all the freaking time. But here, if you have this addition of mutants, we all know mutants are coming. We know mutants are coming.
Yeah.
We know the Fantastic Four are coming. They're directly involved with the X-Men. We know the X-Men are coming. There's all kinds of rumors of Wolverine and what him showing up and where and how that's going to happen and who's been cast and who's had conversations and so we know all of that's coming. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some kind of announcement at San Diego Comic-Con in like a week and a half. But I just love that they use this platform to tell this story, this coming of age teenage story about doing the right thing with your powers, and teaching us as Americans much more of a realistic version of the Muslim world. Oh, by the way, here's mutants. Here's the word mutants, and what that could
that
mean.
On into your DMs.
I was like freaking Neo, like dodging their old spoilers today. But I've already seen what does this mean for storytelling going forward. Because as we sit right now, we have She-Hulk. We know Secret Wars is coming, but there's like a trailer and whatever. Wakanda Forever, we have nothing. We don't even have like an official poster yet, which means we'll probably get something in a week and a half. But after that, there's rumors of stuff. There's conversations of stuff.
Yeah.
We know the Marvels are coming.
Again, they'll do that at Comic-Con. They'll do their here's the next phase,
next wave. That I really feel like. I really think that Multiverse of Madness was like the end cap of Phase 4.
Mm-hmm.
But you could kind of pause and kind of continue on with the idea of Phase 4.
Well, it's different now, right? Because now we have TV shows. So before it was just the movies, and so it was easier to get this is the end. And now in a year or a year and a half, you're going to get the beginning. But now they can kind of, this is the end, but then there's these little shows that are kind of filling in the gaps and
that's what
get you from one point to the next so that you're ready for the next phase.
She-Hulk is actually going to feel like dealing with maybe some of the ramifications that come out of this episode, specifically of Ms. Marvel, because damage control is a big part of what that show is going to be, and it's going to be her in court going against everything. So I feel like there's going to be at least there's going to be that conversation. Here's where it's going to connect to this, and we're kind of going to get in that point where everything's going to start connecting, because Ms. Marvel, The Marvels, comes out in July of next year.
Right.
And Wakanda Forever, again, we know nothing. but it feels like that's a good place to maybe introduce a X-Men or a thing. But there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that movie, and a lot of it has to deal with Chadwick not being with us anymore.
Yeah.
And so you have to deal with that and what that means and what it means to having Wakanda within the overall universe of the MCU before you even have the conversation of X-Men Final Fantastic Four,
Right.
who's coming next, what's the big crossover event, whatever. You have to deal with that. So that's why I've been like, we're going to get something down the line. We're probably going to get something in San Diego. It's going to be a yada yada kind of thing. Oh, by the way, we're going to do, X-Men versus the Avengers, and then we'll get our way to
Kevin will get out there with his timeline,
and his baseball cap, and it'll change at the end, and Ahsoka lives. Last little thing we have to talk about before we talk about the series overall, which we've kind of already been doing, is the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene. Kamala falls down on the bed. Mom says it doesn't sound like science work, homework, because Mom's gonna make sure she still gets good grades if she's out superhero. And the bangle starts to light up, and Kamala stands up, and then she gets sucked through the closet into a portal or whatever. But then Carol Danvers pops into the new hole in the door, and she's looking around the room, and then what's going on, and leaves. So I have no concept of what this could mean, but it feels like if we're going to have the conversation with the Kree again, because of what Captain Marvel introduced and the idea of kind of what Miss Marvel is in the comics, Kree feels like they were trying to pull someone in to do something, and Carol got switched or whatever. I'm spitballing. I have no concept.
Well, Carol could have been. I mean, my first impression, not knowing anything about anything, was just, Carol has said over and over and over again, I'm out there doing all this stuff with all these other universes, planets, whatever, that something was going on.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was kind of from her end, but that maybe there's a connection between her and Kamala because of the bangle.
Because of the bangle.
And Kamala has finally decided on Ms. Marvel, and she's Captain Marvel, and so now there's a connection. And I mean, Carol was even wearing the same outfit, kind of.
It was a very different outfit than what she wears in game. And
it looked a little more different. Like Kamala's.
Yes, much more. Yeah,
and Kamala even got sucked through a Captain America. Or Captain Marvel poster, and she looks all around her room, and there's just pictures of her everywhere, and which probably she's like, oh my god, I'm in a teenager's room, because that's what it looks like.
Teenage boys in their room, probably.
No, but yeah. So I mean, I just from my thought, I was thinking it was more on Carol's side that something happened, rather than Kamala's side making it happen.
Right. She's the reaction to whatever's going on the other end. But it made a point of, after that all happening, that Miss Marvel's going to show up again in the Marvels.
Right.
And that's going to be out in July. Right now, it's July 23rd of next year.
Yeah.
And so, again, we know nothing about that. There's been no.
But I wouldn't be surprised if that's it, too. That's all we really get of that story until the Marvels come out.
Till February, whatever, March of next year, we'll get a trailer or something.
No. But I mean, for She-Hulk, I mean, they might mention something about, the Light Girl or whatever. But I don't expect any more of this story. Until we get to the Marvels.
Again, we have no idea. We're excited. The only other thing I want to talk about is in the comic, when she gets hit with the Terrigen Mist, Kamala does. She comes out and becomes Miss Marvel, but she's a blonde-haired, skinny white girl, and her process in the comics, if I understand it correctly, is her finding her own identity as Miss Marvel, being Muslim, being brown, brown skinned girl, whatever, and that kind of like that's part of the conversation of the beginning run of the comic. So
This is
Kamala getting
almost a
it,
reversal
it's
of
kind of,
that.
but I just love it's kind of an homage to that kind of concept or
Yeah,
whatever. So
yeah,
overall, I've really liked this show. I
yeah,
really liked
yep,
its. I won't say lightheartedness as a bad thing. It's the stakes were much smaller,
yeah,
and I was okay with that.
yep.
And a lot of people have been complaining that there's been no connectivity within the Phase 4 and that they're just telling individual stories. And I've really been appreciating that we've getting these different types of stories within Thor, Love and Thunder, and Multiverse of Madness, and
Yeah.
Shang-Chi, and then you get all the different things that we're doing on Disney Plus with Moon Knight and Loki and
Yeah.
WandaVision and Miss Marvel. And I just I,
We
I
have to introduce some new characters,
you have to
people.
introduce new characters and everything.
The Avengers are gone. Half of them are dead, and the other half are off.
Doing Christmas movies.
Doing doing. I was going to say Guardian shit,
I
but
know. Well, okay, we covered the two.
but you've got to introduce some new people, some new blood, and I was just laughing because, like, you know, again, the comparison with Star Wars, the Star Wars fans are like, stop telling the Skywalker story, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is the same thing. We are done with the Avengers.
We are done with this version of the Avengers.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to bring in, how else do you want to bring in new people?
That's why I've been really loving what they're doing. Is they're telling these different style of stories with both Disney Plus and on the big screen, and they're allowing each of the showrunners or directors kind of bring their own story, and having someone of Pakistani descent be the showrunner. Like he came in with a 200-page Bible of this is what I want to do with the show. He came in and sat down with Kevin Feige, and then like just everybody that he brought in that they brought in. Like, I'm going to add Kevin in this whole conversation, but like everybody they brought in to make sure this show was right, and I again I just liked the stakes. I liked the smaller stakes, just about one person getting their powers. I kind of talked about this in the past. Somebody other people have talked about it. It's the modern day Spider-Man story. They do it from with Miles too. Miles is kind of a different kind of story within the comic as well, but it's also smaller stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there are runs where are much bigger stakes, but to tell an individual story about a young girl, period, a young girl of Muslim descent, period, and a young girl of brown skin of Muslim descent in New York, period, to be able to tell that story and have it be impactful for the two whiteys who are sitting here in front of the camera, I love that. And sure, there's some other things I'd like to have seen them do. Maybe make it 8 episodes, spend some more, character time with the Red Daggers, and
Yeah.
maybe spend more time with Kamran and his relationship with
But
his
again,
mother.
it's a series, and they can absolutely make more.
Right.
Again, they've never, they haven't committed any of their series to be more than one season. They've waited kind of for to see what the fan reaction was, or in the case of like WandaVision, there's just, I mean, that's it. That's the end of that story.
Yeah.
But it's also, again, kind of going back to the ability to tell these stories in these series on Disney Plus instead of a movie.
Yeah.
This story would never have been made its own movie. It just never would have.
No.
People would not.
She would have been a second or third level character in some other movie.
In some other, like a bigger Avengers level movie where they, there's this girl who lives in New Jersey and we're going to bring her in or whatever. This gives them the ability to actually flesh out some of these smaller characters and then bring them into a movie like the Marvels.
Yeah.
And then maybe give them their own movie or keep them on the, on a series.
I'd love to see what happens with the Marvels and then have her come back and give us that story of now I'm living in this world where I am a known person. How do I balance being a teenage girl with feelings and emotions and trying to make my life work and be the superhero.
Right.
That's what Spider-Man had been
Yes.
for a long time.
Yes.
We've kind of told that story in the movies, but if you spend that time now with Kamala and her family dynamic and her idea of having a supportive family and having them be there, or maybe the risks of having them there. I love to have that kind of conversation with a character like this because it's not a character we see on a regular basis. I want to see Spider-Man in the college age. Now we've introduced high school Tom Holland Spider-Man. We've gotten Peter Parker's kind of story.
Tom's gonna be 30 and he's just gonna be going into college.
I mean, I'm 47. College is a thing, you know. But I like now you've told that story. Now you can bring a younger generation to tell that story to a little bit differently, but you're telling the same kind of general story to a younger audience. This is the thing that Star Wars does so well: is every 5, 7, 10 years they go back and start telling a story for 12-year-olds and tell morale stories to 12-year-olds with spaceships and light swords. And now Kevin Feige has always said his inspiration for the MCU is directly from Star Wars. And so they're doing that in a roundabout way. And Kamala is one of the main Miss Marvel, the show. Kamala is one of the main ways they're going to do that. They've introduced a bunch of the Patriot, Stature, the boys, the Wanda's boys, like a younger group of people
Right.
that can grow into these roles. Who now in 3 years we get the Wonder Twins, kind of story, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
But I appreciate that kind of idea, and I'm just tired of people like there's no connectivity and these shows aren't very good because they don't connect like they used to. They're not supposed to right now,
right.
and they're supposed to be their own standalone things, and we're gonna get there.
Right.
But this show
Just
was
wait 5 years, and then you'll be like, "Oh my God, they told us everything, and it was all set up in the beginning."
Kevin's said,
calm down.
Kevin's said we've already laid the ground. We have already now laid the groundwork for our next big crossover.
Right.
You just don't know it yet.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, but with this series, I just really, really happy with it. And I don't know where I rank it with all my other stuff, all the Marvel stuff.
I gotta sit with it for a minute.
But
I mean, it's hard to do.
It's hard. But I really liked it. So that is our thoughts on it in long discussion. I don't care. 25 of you are going to watch this the whole way through, and I'm okay with it. So if you watched it all the way through to this point, put in the comments, no way home. If you watch all the way through to this point, I just want to see.
It'll be a secret club of
secret
no
plug or whatever. So let us know what you thought of our reaction, discussion, and review of Miss Marvel Episode 6 and the series overall in the comments down below. No way home. And let us know what you thought of the series. Please be nice. That's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.